Most people think retirement planning is all about saving money and investing. And yeah, that's important. But nobody talks about the other side of the equation, getting rid of the financial anchors that'll sink your retirement faster than the Titanic. I'm talking about the stuff that seemed like a great idea when you were 45 and pulling in six figures, but turns into a money pit when you're 65 and living on a fixed income. The things that your friends told you to buy, that financial magazines said were smart investments that you convinced yourself you'd use forever. Spoiler, you won't. What's up, everyone? It's Matt. And today, I'm breaking down 5 specific things you need to sell before you retire, not just for the money, but for your sanity. Because retirement should mean freedom, not managing a portfolio of depreciating assets and maintenance headaches. Let's get into it. 1. Your too big house. We start with that 4-bedroom, 3-bath suburban fortress you bought when the kids were little. This scene plays out everywhere. You bought the house in 1994 for $180,000, a steal at the time. You needed the space. 3 kids, Sunday dinners, neighborhood barbecues. Fast forward to today. The kids graduated, moved to Austin or Denver or wherever people who say, "I'm into craft beer" live now. They visit for Christmas, maybe the 4th of July if you're lucky. Meanwhile, you're rattling around in 2,800 square feet. 2 spare bedrooms are just storage for Christmas decorations and that exercise bike you used twice in 2019. The guest room sits empty 358 days a year. The formal dining room you had to have, it's now a pile of mail and your spouse's Etsy packaging supplies. Now for the scary part, the numbers. Property taxes jumped from $2,400 per year to $8,200. Homeowners insurance went from $850 to $2,600 after last spring's hailstorms. Heating this monument to 1990s optimism cost $340 last month. And that's before the $15,000 roof, the $8,000 HVAC replacement, and the $6,500 deck held together by old paint and prayers. My neighbor Dan, great guy, terrible at math, lived this exact story. He kept saying, "But what about when the grandkids visit?" Dan, they're 3 and 5. They like sharing a room. Fighting over toys is basically their hobby. Dan finally ran the numbers. He sold his 3,200 square foot colonial for $625,000, bought a beautiful 1,400 square foot ranch for $340,000. After fees, he walked away with $245,000 in cash. He invested $200,000 conservatively. At 6%, that's $12,000 a year, an extra $1,000 a month just from downsizing. Then came the hidden wins. Property taxes dropped to $3,200. Insurance fell to $1,400. Utilities dropped by about $200 a month. Total savings, $8,600 a year, plus $12,000 in investment income, $20,600 annually. Over 20 years, $412,000. All for selling space he wasn't using. And Dan said the best part wasn't the money. He told me, "It's Saturday morning. I don't mow an acre of grass anymore. I don't fix gutters. I play golf." The man has his priorities straight. 2. The extra cars. Meet my Uncle Rick. He's 67, retired, and owns 4 vehicles. His daily driver is a 2019 Toyota Camry. His wife has a 2020 Honda CR-V. Then there's the 2015 F-150 he bought because you never know when you'll need to haul something. In 3 years, he's hauled exactly 2 items, a used fridge and some mulch he could have had delivered for $40. And of course, there's the wild card, a 1991 Mazda Miata. He drives it maybe 4 times a summer because it's a classic and it'll be worth something someday. It's currently worth about $8,000. Over the last decade, he spent roughly $14,000 in insurance, storage, and maintenance. Let's talk real costs. Insurance averages about $1,200 per vehicle per year for retirees. Registration and inspections run another $150. Even barely driven cars need maintenance. Tires age, batteries die, fluids degrade, averaging about $400 annually. That's $1,750 per vehicle per year just to exist. Most retired couples have at least 1 extra car. 3 vehicles cost about $5,250 a year. Over a 20-year retirement, $105,000. Rick's 4-car setup burns roughly $7,000 annually, $140,000 over 20 years, all to avoid occasionally renting a truck. And cars depreciate. That F-150 he paid $35,000 for is worth maybe $22,000 now. The Miata hasn't moved in value in a decade, which means it's actually worth less after inflation. If Rick had invested that $35,000 instead, it'd be close to $68,000 today. But what if we both need to go somewhere at the same time? Fair question. I asked Rick to track it. It happened 9 times last year.
9 times cost him $7,000. That's $777 per conflict. You could Uber anywhere in town and still have money left for dinner. Here's the simple rule. 1 reliable car per person who actually drives regularly. That's it. Sell the truck you use twice a year. Home Depot rents one for $19. Sell the sentimental sports car. Rent something fun for a weekend when nostalgia hits. Invest the difference. Let your money fund your retirement, not a museum of depreciating metal in your driveway. 3. Stuff you're storing. This one physically hurts me to talk about. Storage units and basements full of valuable stuff. My Aunt Carol, who has generously allowed herself to be roasted, paid $145 a month for a climate-controlled storage unit in Phoenix for 18 years. That's $31,320. Last year, she finally retired and cleaned it out. We spent an entire Saturday inventorying everything. Here's what $31,000 bought her. A dining set from 1987 worth maybe $400 on Facebook Marketplace. Boxes of my cousin's school papers. He's 35 and didn't want them. 17 boxes of Christmas decorations, many partially melted. A treadmill broken since 2009. Clothes that went out of style when Friends was still on TV. And Beanie Babies, once meant to fund retirement, now worth about $47 total. We held a yard sale and made $680. Donated 6 truckloads to Goodwill. The treadmill went to the dump because even Goodwill said no. So she paid $31,320 to store $680 worth of stuff and memories she never looked at. That's a 97.8% loss. If she'd invested that $145 a month instead, she'd have roughly $68,000 today at a modest 7% return. And storage units are just the obvious problem. Let's talk basements, attics, and garages that haven't seen a car since the Bush administration. Not sure which one. Every square foot costs money. At $300 per square foot, a 400-square-foot basement filled with junk represents $120,000 of house value doing absolutely nothing. That space increases your property taxes, insurance, heating, and cooling. Downsizing by just those 400 square feet could save around $3,000 a year. Over a 20-year retirement at 6%, that's about $110,000. Then there's the mental cost. A minimalist friend of mine says Americans spend about 13% of their time managing or searching for their stuff. That's over an hour a day. In retirement, do you really want to spend it babysitting boxes? Here's the plan. Pick one room this weekend. If you haven't touched it in 12 months, it goes into sell, donate, or trash. Price to move. Donate without guilt. Trash without remorse. And cancel the storage unit. Nothing in there is worth what you're paying to keep it. 4. Your vacation property. This one's going to upset some people. That lake house, mountain cabin, or beach condo you bought as your retirement dream. Meet the Johnsons. They bought a cabin in northern Michigan in 2008 for $240,000. Gorgeous place, right on the lake. The plan? Use it for summer vacations while working, then really enjoy it in retirement. Reality, according to Tom Johnson, who retired in 2022, we used it about 3 weeks a year while working. Last summer, we stayed 6 weeks, and honestly, we were bored by week 4. Turns out there's only so much fishing and dock sitting you can do. Now, the real pain, the costs. Property taxes, $4,200. Insurance, including flood coverage, $2,800. HOA fees, $1,200. Winterizing and spring opening, $1,600. Utilities year-round, $2,400. Lawn service, $800. Repairs and maintenance, about $3,500. Total, $16,500 per year. They use it 6 weeks a year. That's $393 per day, or $2,750 per week. For $2,750 a week, Tom could rent a luxury villa in Tuscany, a Miami Beach penthouse, a chateau in France, a different place every year, zero maintenance, no frozen pipes, no emergency phone calls in February. Over 20 years of retirement, those carrying costs add up to $330,000, and that's before major repairs. If Tom sold the cabin today for $285,000 and invested at a conservative 6%, it would generate about $17,100 a year. He could rent vacation homes forever on the returns alone and never touch the principal. But here's the real trap. Ownership creates obligation. Tom and his wife keep going back because we own it, we should use it. Meanwhile, they haven't gone to Colorado in 10 years, never took that Alaska cruise. If it's paid off, costs under $4,000 a year, and you use it 12 plus weeks annually, keep it. But if you're spending $10,000 plus a year to visit a place 3 weeks out of obligation, you're burning retirement money. The world is huge. Retirement is short. Don't spend it tied to the same dock because of sunk cost fallacy. 5. Your business. And finally, the one that financially wrecks more retirements than anything else on this list, holding on to your business when you should have sold it. Meet Bob Perkins. He owned a regional HVAC company in Ohio. 3 locations, 28 employees, about $4.2 million in revenue, and $400,000 in owner profit. Solid business. Bob retired at 64, but couldn't sell because, in his words, this business is my legacy. So he kept ownership, hired a general manager, and promised he'd only step in for important decisions. 5 years later, Bob is 69. He's still working 15 to 20 hours a week consulting. He gets calls about employee drama, customer complaints, and equipment failures. Last winter, he spent 3 days dealing with a lawsuit his GM was supposed to handle. His stress is through the roof. His blood pressure meds have been increased twice. And here's the real damage. The business is worth less now. At 64, when Bob was fully engaged, it was valued around $1.2 million. Today, with an absentee owner and inconsistent leadership, it's worth maybe $850,000. By not selling, Bob burned $350,000 in asset value. If he'd sold at 64 and invested $1.2 million at a conservative 6%, he'd be earning $72,000 a year in passive income while actually being retired. Instead, he's stressed, semi-working, and watching his biggest asset shrink. Now contrast that with Linda Chen. Linda owned a successful accounting firm. At 62, she started planning her exit. She documented systems, trained a successor, and made herself unnecessary. At 64, she sold for $840,000, about 2.8 times annual owner profit. She invested the money and retired for real. She volunteers, travels, and spends Thursdays with her grandkids. When asked if she missed the business, she said, "Not even a little." Here's the truth most owners miss. Your business is usually worth more than you think if you sell it properly, and far less if you wait too long. Small businesses often sell for 2 to 4 times annual owner profit, but only if they run without you. Buyers don't want a job, they want a system. If you're retired but still solving problems every week, you're not retired, you're trapped. Your business is an asset, not your identity. Sell it at peak value, invest the proceeds, and enjoy retirement instead of pretending to be in it. Here's the reality. Every dollar you spend maintaining stuff you don't need is a dollar you can't spend on your actual retirement. Every hour you spend managing storage units, vacation homes, extra cars, or businesses you should have sold is an hour you're not spending with your grandkids, traveling, or finally learning to play guitar like you've been saying you would since 1987. Retirement isn't about accumulating stuff. It's about having the freedom to do what you want, when you want, without being weighed down by maintenance, property taxes, and assets that cost more than they're worth. The hardest part? Letting go. We're emotionally attached to our stuff. That house holds memories. That car reminds you of better days. That business is your identity. But here's the thing. Memories live in your head, not in walls and vehicles. Your identity is who you are, not what you own. And the freedom you'll gain from letting go of this stuff, that's worth way more than any of the things you're holding on to. So do me a favor. Pick one thing from this list, just one, and commit to dealing with it in the next 90 days. Get your house valued. List that extra car on Facebook Marketplace. Call a business broker. Clean out your storage unit. Just start, because the best time to do this was 10 years ago. The second best time is right now. If this was helpful, hit that like button. Subscribe if you want more content about building wealth and not being broke in retirement. Drop a comment and tell me which one of these you're guilty of. I genuinely want to know. And if you want to learn more about retirement planning, check out the video I'm linking right now about how much money you actually need to retire. It's eye-opening.